Hey everybody, it's Sam Culper here from Forward Observer. Today I want to talk about an item in my Forward Observer TV video idea book. And I've written here, intelligence is a team sport, which is true enough. I want to flesh that out a bit. So there are a few reasons why intelligence needs to be a team sport in terms of not only preparedness, which is a fairly low op tempo or low operational tempo mission. All right. So, I mean, we're planning for things, we're thinking through threats or potential conditions, events, or scenarios that we might face. And one person can do that moderately well. Where it gets into the mission, when that mission is expanded during an emergency or when the op tempo begins to increase, when the operational tempo, which for us could be defined as when events start happening in greater frequency or in greater volume than one person can monitor or keep track of, that's really when we must have a team. And maybe your team is 2 people or 3 people. I don't get, it's not frustration. I don't know what it is. But sometimes people will come to me and they say, "Oh, hey Sam, I'm the intel person for my prepper group." It's like, well, you should have more than one person, because this event that you are expecting, this event that you're planning for, is going to have a much higher op tempo than you're going to be able to handle by yourself. So first of all, that's great that your prepper group has an intel guy, like a dedicated intel guy. That's fabulous. The next thing you need to do, if that's you, the next thing really that you need to do is begin cross-training people. I'll talk about that a little bit later, because we do need a team. One person cannot do everything. So I bought a buddy of mine, Tim. I'll go ahead and plug his shop here. He runs Old Grouch's Military Surplus in, I think it's out of Clyde, North Carolina. I'll track down it's either Waynesville or Clyde, but it's somewhere right in there, North Carolina. And I saw him a few weeks ago. I saw him last month, and he was telling me about, he's getting in this new Marine Corps. Actually, just bought one. He's getting in these Marine Corps. I don't remember what the nomenclature is, but it's an unmanned ground station. So it has sensors, and you use like radio telephone wire, and you plug the sensor in the ground, you stick it in the ground, and it monitors for vibration. So maybe it's a deer, maybe it's a hog, maybe it's a person on foot. Maybe you want to stick a couple of these in the back 40 acres so that you can see if people are encroaching. Especially those of you who have land and have problems with hunters, occasionally people will ask, "Well, hey Sam, how do we collect intel on people coming to our land?" It's like, well, start with a trail cam and see what you can get. And then one guy was like, "Oh, well, my trail cams out there get stolen." I say, well, get one that will text you pictures, and that basically runs on 5G. There's a lot of different things. I don't want to get too out in the weeds here, but let's consider this, right? If you have, let's say you have 100 acres, which is small in Texas, but 100 acres, that's a lot of land. You cannot feasibly keep eyes on all along the boundary of your 100-acre property. So how many sensors do we want? Do we want 1 or 2 sensors hanging out there? Or do we want to put a sensor in every place conceivable that someone might trespass or come onto our property? Well, I want as many sensors out there as I can get. So as soon as that sensor begins picking up vibration, it'll send a message to this little box, and it'll buzz, or give some kind of alert, whatever it does. And then I can say, okay, this sensor is at this grid coordinate, or this lat long, or this is in the northeast corner of the property, or what have you. So I know that there's some kind of activity out there. The great thing about this is not only does it measure activity, it'll also tell you kind of like volume. If it's like, a squirrel, it may not even pick it up. But if it's a human trudging along, then it has some way to kind of, you can measure the signature there, which is actually kind of a form of MASINT, or measurements and signature intelligence. I'm getting off track here. So we want sensors, right? I want as many sensors as possible for this thing. Well, your prepper group, we want sensors in town, in and around town. We want sensors in and around law enforcement. We want sensors in and around politics. We want sensors in and around the business community or economic and financial center of gravity for your area, because the more sensors we have, the more information I have coming in. And as an intel guy, I love information. Hopefully it's being reported fairly accurately. That's really kind of a training problem that we'll run into. But the more people we have, the better we need to ensure that everyone at least gets a minimum of training. So number one reason why intelligence is a team sport is because we want sensors. We want people out collecting information, saying, hey, Sam, one of your intelligence requirements is identify any sign of gang activity. I don't want just one or two people, who go about their day looking for that stuff. I want to make sure everyone in my prepper group says, hey, even if you think it's insignificant, let me know. If it's insignificant, I'll tell you. Once I get that information, we can record that in an area study, or kind of put that into that. If that's a good puzzle piece, we'll put it into the puzzle, and we'll say, okay, here's a sign that this gang may be, recruiting, or, there's a young kid. I don't know. There's lots of different scenarios, but that's just one example. I want to make sure that I have lots of sensors, and unless you are deliberate in preaching the good news of intelligence to your prepper group, and unless you achieve buy-in, you're not going to have a team of intel guys. You're going to have you, or you and a friend. More sensors, more coverage. 2, on the analysis side. So we have all this information coming in. I always say analysis is the bottleneck. And that's the problem that NSA runs into, because they're getting, 15 quintillion bytes a second, or how many ever bytes, whatever they're getting. And unless that, you could have the greatest information in the world being collected, but until it goes in front of the eyes of an analyst, it's just ones and zeros sitting in a database somewhere. Until a human can actually look at that and say, oh, I understand the significance of this. Then if you're not aware of it, it will not be used. Analysis is the bottleneck. You could have 1 gallon of information coming in, but if you can only process 1 ounce a second, then, or if you're having 1 gallon a second come in and you can only process 1 ounce a second out, then you're going to have this massive buildup of potentially actionable intelligence information, and you're not going to get across it. So really, it is a team intelligence analysis as well as a team sport, because we need to make sure that we have time to look at everything that's being reported in a timely manner. Now, specifically for analysts, one of the things I tell students in class is, no one is as smart as everyone. So there's a few things that we have to do. To make sure that we are correctly interpreting information that's coming in. And the 2 things that make an intelligence analyst very good is, number 1, subject matter expertise. I could be the greatest Russian military analyst in the world, and you put me at a desk monitoring West African tribes and warlords, and I'm going to be making coffee. I'm going to be getting coffee for the other analysts, because that's not my domain. That's not where my expertise is. So first of all, if you want to be a good analyst, you really have to know your subject. That's why the agency and DIA and all these other A's, that's why they recruit engineers, and they recruit foreign language specialists and cultural specialists, and they recruit, lots of people who have a domain expertise, because, you put me on a nuclear missile analysis team, I don't know anything about nuclear missiles except that they go boom. That's it. So no one is as smart as everyone. So, people in my prepper group, they may not be quote unquote intelligence analysts, but if Bob is a retired sheriff's deputy and I have information, something about whatever local law enforcement's doing, they're running this new initiative or they're trying to track down these gang members, I want to go and run that by him and see what Bob thinks if he's a retired sheriff's deputy. Because perspective matters. So that's the first thing. We have to attain subject matter expertise. And then the second thing is we have to remove biases so that we can arrive at more accurate conclusions. And so I'm a white middle-class kid. I didn't grow up in the hood. Chances are, unless I deliberately pursue that, I'm probably not going to be a very good inner city gang analyst because I don't understand that culture. Now, if I grew up in that culture, then I would have not only would I have domain expertise there, but I would also lack ignorance, which is a bias. So I'm ignorant of a lot of inner city culture, and ignorance is a bias. There are other biases that we can have. Confirmation bias. Okay, let's see, what's a good confirmation? Okay, yeah, so we deal with this one a lot, right? So there's this lady named Pamela Rosenau, and she was in Barron's a couple months ago saying that, recession is imminent. If we're not already in recession, it's going to start very soon. Okay. Well, if I'm expecting a recession, I'm going to say, there's another financial analyst. She actually runs her own investment firm, believe it or not. There's another financial person saying we're going to have a recession. I believe that's going to happen. Therefore, I'm going to succumb to confirmation bias because we as humans, we believe what we want to believe is true. And that's an example of confirmation bias. So we've got to remove bias because she said that 3 months ago. We're not in a recession. Recession, so far at least, does not appear imminent. I want to know what crystal ball she has. But so at any rate, we want to remove bias so that we can have a clearer perspective on things. Next, one person can't do everything alone. Okay, so when op tempo is very low, that's fine. But let's say a disaster does strike. And hurricane season's coming up. So let's say that another hurricane washes into central Texas and people are trying to evacuate or they're trying to migrate, go to family's home or whatever. And there's a lot of information. I'm drawing on this experience here with the Cajun Navy last year during Hurricane Florence. And so we were trying to support their search and rescue operations. And there were so many questions coming in. How do I get from point A to point B? Or what's the condition of this bridge? Has this bridge or this roadway been washed away? There are so many questions that one person couldn't handle. Now, that was a very high op tempo. Now, that's probably not something that the average person in the average prepper group is going to have to deal with. But let's also keep in mind that an emergency is 24/7. If there's one person in your prepper group whose role is to deal with the intelligence, he's got to sleep at some point in time. And so the question is, who is providing the coverage while this guy is asleep? That's why you need to have at least one intel person. And maybe the intel person's maybe that's not your full-time job in your prepper group. Maybe you're maybe you're the medic person or something, all right? But at any rate, so point is, I think everyone needs to be cross-trained in intelligence. And at a certain level, every single person in your group must know and understand some basic intelligence concepts, right? They need to understand, okay, if I'm going to go out and be attuned to these things that you're asking me to look for, what's the benefit? How does this benefit me? And the answer is, well, we're going to take this information and we're going to put it into an area study so that we can begin to reduce uncertainty about the future. And as soon as we can reduce uncertainty about the future, we can tell the group and we can begin preparing for an upcoming event before it happens. And so being able to bring in information, analyze it, and then anticipate future events or conditions or scenarios is extremely beneficial. You get a head start. That's the benefit of intelligence. Give yourselves a head start. So one person can't do everything. So, you have two people. Okay, well, one person gets sick or one person gets injured, and now you're back down to one intel person. So we need to make sure that we bring all the group kind of up to speed. We get everybody on the same page. Say, look, here, this is the intelligence mission. This is what we're trying to accomplish. This is how it's going to benefit you. You can benefit me by doing X, Y, or Z. So here are our intelligence requirements, or here are the 4 things that we're looking for. If you see any information or you are exposed to any of this information, please let me know. Pass that information up the chain. If not to me, then to someone who can get it to me. Okay, and now, all of a sudden we run into another problem, which is someone's on the other side of town, the power's out. How do they get that information from me? Okay, well, now we got to get everyone up on communications, because having access to actionable information so that we can produce actionable intelligence does us no good if that information doesn't get to the analyst, or at least doesn't get to the decision maker somehow. So that's another thing. Maybe I probably need to do a whole video on this kind of intel food chain kind of thing, where, okay, here's all the things that we need to be planning for, like, kind of a gear list or something like that. All right, well, those are all my pros for intelligence being a team sport. I don't really have any cons, but here's where your problem becomes a little more complex, and that is, now all of a sudden you have lots of information coming in. Now we have to manage this information, and we go back to, we're receiving 1 gallon of water a minute, or 1 gallon of water a second, and we can only process 1 ounce of water per second. And so we're going to have this massive buildup, and that's really why we need multiple people in high op-tempo scenarios, multiple people combing through this information to get an inkling of what's happening out there, especially beyond our line of sight. The other con, it's not really a con, it's just something that we'll need to keep in mind, is that everybody's got to have training. Everyone needs to be trained. We've got to do salute report training, basically see something, say something. Don't call me on the phone saying, oh, hey, Sam, there's a bunch of soldiers down here and they've got a bunch of trucks, and just thought I should let you know. It's like, well, okay, what kind of soldiers are they? And how many of them are there? And what are they doing? And what is their exact location? And what do their patches or camouflage look like? What time did you see this? What equipment do they have? That's the salute report. I'll do a whole nother video on this, but size, activity, location, unit or uniform, time and equipment, that can be reduced down. I want as much context as possible, but just for your situational awareness, that could be reduced down to assault report, size, activity, location, time, just for the sake of brevity. But I don't want a phone call or text message saying, oh, a bunch of troops down here on Highway 83. Okay, how many is a bunch of troops? What are they doing? And Highway 83 is 1,000 miles long or 100 miles long. Where are they on Highway 83? And which way are they headed? And how fast are they going? All right, so at any rate, I hope I've kind of made a convincing case that intelligence is a team sport. We all need training. So if you agree and this stuff interests you, I just ask that you like this video, subscribe it, and share it with your friends as well, because getting the message out about intelligence or situational awareness is critical, because not enough people are thinking through this stuff. Not enough people are planning for this stuff. And if you don't have a plan to manage information, if you don't have a plan to gather local intelligence as it's happening, or as close as possible to when it happens, then you are going to be on the losing side of this cutting edge of information. And if you're not getting the information, or you're getting it late, then you're really setting yourself up for failure, and you're making yourself susceptible to strategic shock, which is being exploited by a threat, an event, or a condition that you did not know existed, or that you were not expecting. And you're also sabotaging your own level of preparedness, because we can be prepared. We can have lots of guns and ammo and water and solar panels and lots of people in our prepper group. But if things are happening so fast that we cannot respond to them, or if we're in a situation where we are on the losing side of breaking events, then your preparedness is not going to last you as long as you would think or would hope. So at any rate, intelligence is a team sport. Like and subscribe, please, to this channel. And also, we're almost ready to launch Ford Observer Radio. And I'll have more information about that shortly. But I'm also taking all of these videos, reducing them down basically to a podcast version. So, if you need something to listen to, you're at the gym, you're driving down the road or whatever, and you're not watching YouTube, you can also just subscribe to the podcast. We're on all major platforms. Just look up Ford Observer Radio. And we'll also be working on a new show as well. I think that's all I have for this week. So, hey, thanks for watching. And until next time, stay out front.